Wait, what was the question you just asked? I need to hear this one more time.
Okay, so this morning I woke up and did what everybody does. First thing, you just look at your phone. First thing that I saw, the absolute first thing, was a tweet that Adrian had posted that was like, do birds like cheese? And it was like 7 a.m. And that question totally just messed me up because that is a fantastic question.
Very valid question. I mean, obviously pigeons like everything, but like do birds like cheese?
Did you get an answer to this?
I've not figured out
The question isn't whether or not they'll eat it, it's whether they like it, which is like, Google does not have an answer.
No.
And it's been messing me up all day. So I needed to check in and see if you had gotten to the bottom of it.
All right, we're going to have to find out about this. If you're watching live right now and you know whether birds like cheese.
Yeah, if you're an ornithologist and you listen to this podcast.
Please get a hold of us immediately, wherever you are. Hello, everyone. This is Trends with Benefits. This is our Roundtable Tech podcast where we ponder the most important questions of the day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. So we are a weekly podcast. We also broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. So if you're watching on there, hi, thanks for joining. But also, make sure you subscribe to the audio version. And today is the first of a two-parter on space. This one is entitled Space Junk. And that is, you have to say it like that. There's no other way to do it. Either that or it sounds like Space Junk could also be like, I feel like the name of a Cisco album in like 2001. That's for some reason, he is who I picture naming his album Space Junk. But regardless, that's what we're talking about. All of that stuff out in orbit around our planet. How are we going to clean it up? We're going to discuss all of this and more. But to start off, let's introduce our cast of characters. I'm Greg Nibbler, and to my right,
I am Adrian Warner, a.k.a. Hot Nozzle.
Hot Nozzle.
I don't know why I couldn't get through that.
Do birds see like cheese?
a.k.a. Cheddar Pigeon.
We'll remind everyone, and actually Drew missed out on this. We almost had a complete breakdown last week.
Yeah.
Because Adrian and I had the hardcore giggles, and we almost didn't make it through the podcast.
And it was a serious topic.
It was a serious topic last week, too. Coronavirus.
Oh, man.
And,
These picked a good one. All right.
Yeah.
That's some things going on.
Fall apart when I'm not here.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm Caleb Denson, a.k.a. The Whiskey Mist, a.k.a. Chicken Bone, a.k.a. Giggles McGee.
Giggles McGee. There it is.
I had a better one planned, and I don't remember what it was.
I think it was like Tender Fingers. Tender Fingers Dennison or something.
It was Tender something.
Tender something
Pat?
around there. Well, anyway, regardless of that. On the end. Have you
yeah,
missed us?
Yeah, I have missed you guys quite a lot. I am Drew Prindle, a.k.a. Professor Prindle, and I usually bring in the history segments to start off the show.
Yes, indeed. And that's what we need to start off with right now. Drew, what's the history of space?
I mean,
The whole thing.
When did that happen?
Let me tell you a story that starts about 13 billion years ago. That's a much longer episode. So I started with just like the history of space debris, which starts with pretty much as soon as we started launching stuff into orbit.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we put up in orbit was Sputnik 1 back in 1957. It was the Soviet Union. They launched that up, which kicked off the space race, and everybody, like the U.S., was just afraid of satellites. Yeah, it freaked us out. That was the first thing, and obviously, like the satellite itself wasn't a piece of debris; it was like an operational piece of equipment or whatever. But lots of the stuff that was involved in getting it into orbit created some amount of debris. But back then, it wasn't really a problem because it was just like one or two little bits,
right,
in this massive sea of space around the planet. But the problem was that was not the last launch that we did. Like that turned up the heat almost immediately. I've got a little timeline here. So 3 years later, after Sputnik had launched, by 1961, there were 115 satellites in orbit, which means 100.
Whoa.
Wow.
115.
That fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
They got
crap,
busy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that war money, man. Just like space
That's true,
budgets.
yeah.
Oh my God, they were just going crazy. 115 in orbit by 61. By 62, that we put another 65 in orbit. By 1963, there were another 50 on top of that. 82 the year after that, and then 108 after that. And that pace continues up until like the early 90s.
Oh my God.
And then when stuff kind of starts to drop off, we didn't do nearly as many rocket launches then. And every single one of those, there's not just like a payload that goes into orbit, but there's like bits of the rocket that just get left in orbit, like the upper stage boosters or whatever, or the stuff that delivers the payload. There's like rocket fairings. If there are crashes and stuff like that, little bits of debris get created from that. So by January of 2019, which was a year ago, but it's like the most complete look at like how much stuff in space we have possible, there were more than 128 million pieces of debris smaller than 1 centimeter.
Wow.
Beyond that, there were 900,000 pieces of debris between 1 and 10 centimeters, so 10 times bigger potentially, and around 34,000 pieces bigger than 10 centimeters. And that's like 10 centimeters and to the size of a rocket booster. So there's a lot of stuff orbiting Earth right now. And the thing is, it's all moving at like insanely high speeds.
Yeah.
So you might think like, oh yeah, something smaller than a centimeter is not a big deal, but it's moving at like oftentimes upwards of 10,000 miles per hour or whatever. So despite the fact that these things have not a lot of mass, they have like the energy oftentimes of a freight train.
Right.
So like a collision is not a small deal. Like if they hit a satellite or something, they're going to
obliterate that.
They're going to obliterate it, which causes more high velocity junk. So it's a problem that compounds itself. And that's kind of the issue that we're running into now because, as you know, there's more and more. Like, we're picking up the pace of, like, rocket launches and satellite launches now more than ever before. Like, SpaceX, Amazon, OneWeb, they're all trying to get those mega constellations of satellites so we can deliver internet to the whole world.
Right. And that's what we're going to get into, too, is just that side of it, is just how many more things are going up. So
so it's going to get increasingly difficult to avoid collisions that are catastrophic. So there were a couple
I don't understand how they're not happening right now. Well, I'm sure they are, but like, how is it not an absolute just train wreck up there right now?
It kind of is. So like in 2007 and 2009, there were two big collisions or events, basically. China had an anti-satellite test where they basically just shot a missile at a satellite to blow it up. And it was
like, whoa!
It was kind of malicious because they wanted to create that debris field and maybe damage some other satellites. But then they were just like, no, we just wanted to get it out of orbit, Like it's this weird game of 4D chess happening in space. It's like the Cold War in space. But then in 2009, there was another one. There were actually two satellites, a defunct Russian military satellite and this active Iridium satellite for communications collided in 2009 and just confetti in space, creating at least 1,000 pieces of debris bigger than 10 centimeters, and then like hundreds of thousands of smaller ones. And if you look at these, like if you're watching on the video right now and you can see this animation we got up on the screen, all of that crazy activity in like low Earth orbit is from that Iridium crash. Like most of the debris that's really close in is from that most recent one in 2009.
Damn. I mean, and there's also another great website to go to, too, stuffin.space, if you're listening at home, like stuffin.space, which also showcases some of, like, the different satellites that are out there. I don't know if this tracks the debris, though. What we were looking at with that debris is insane.
Yeah. Stuff in space is good. There's another good one from this company called Leo Labs, like Leo Low Earth Orbit, and they've actually built, like, these radar arrays on the ground so that they can track stuff as it goes around Earth, and they've got a pretty good bead on everything that's going around Earth, and you can actually see like the different things. So it's like, hey, this is a satellite, this is a rocket body, this is a piece of debris, this is that or whatever, and it's fascinating. When you see it, it's kind of scary.
Right. And so so taking a look at, I don't know if there's more to the history.
No, that's pretty much it.
Like,
we're up to
we have a whole
present
lot
day.
of,
We're up to boom.
whole lot of junk up there. And with that, thinking about what the big issues are, and just to like spell it out, I mean, launching things is incredibly difficult because you have to, get in between that. I mean, right now we can do it, but the more that's up there, the harder it's going to get harder it's going to be to thread that needle, and then also track the orbit to make sure that orbit doesn't encounter something else for more explosions. And eventually, the risk is that if there's too many up there, then we'd not be able to launch anything.
Yeah,
or something. It could be incredibly dangerous for people.
There's this terrifying doomsday scenario called Kessler syndrome, which is basically when we reach the point of like cascading collisions too much in space to where we basically just create an impenetrable barrier of stuff, and then we can't launch ourselves into space anymore and we trap ourselves.
I already imagine like trying to get to Mars, you're in your rocket and you're just getting pelted with crap as you're trying to sail through, dodging crap like Star Trek style, through some sort of meteor field or whatever. I can't believe it's not actually like that already.
It doesn't seem that far-fetched though.
Well, like when we're all trying to escape Earth because, our planet is dying and trying to make
Too
home
bad.
somewhere
You're
else.
stuck.
Too bad.
That's almost poetic justice at that point.
So somebody here will know about this, but I think it was a week or two ago, there was a satellite that was going to come, burning through the atmosphere and potentially hit some part of the United States, I thought it was. Like on alert, somewhere in Kentucky, this thing's going to come down, and maybe, hopefully, it's not your house. But didn't that happen just a couple of weeks ago?
I'm not sure about that one, but that does happen from time to time. Especially, there's a lot of Russian satellites that, for some reason, that's how they handle it. Just chuck it back down onto Earth, which at least gets it out of space. But they're supposed to fall into the ocean usually.
I learned that before the U.S. launches more satellites, they have to prove that they will safely reorbit the Earth if they don't get burnt up in the Earth's atmosphere.
Oh, so if it goes all the way in, it can't be falling down.
How well could you prove that ahead of time? Right. But in theory, you have to have a plan. I don't know if these Russian ones do.
Well, and that's, looking at where we're at right now, the reason this is there's a lot of reasons this is a big deal, but with all of this commercialization of space that's happening, which is great for a whole lot of reasons, but like Drew brought up, SpaceX and Blue Origin and a lot of these companies that are wanting to create this global satellite internet. For anybody that doesn't know, Starlink is a spinoff of SpaceX where they're launching up satellites. They want to get, right now I think it's about 300 they have up there. Their goal is to get maybe as many as 30,000 satellites encompassing the globe, creating broadband internet access no matter where you are on the planet, which that's a good thing. Broadband internet access to rural areas is a really good thing. However, 30,000 more satellites encompassing the globe, that could cause a lot of problems. And that's just one company doing it. Blue Origin, which is Amazon's spinoff, they want to do it. There's another one from the UK. It's One something, and I think it's OneWeb or something like that.
OneWeb is
OneWeb. Yeah, they want to do it. And other companies have talked about doing it where they all want to create their own global network of satellites. How many is too many satellites? But that's where we're at with this. All of these that are going up there it's becoming a big issue of how many are there.
Capitalism doesn't really scale well to space, I guess.
No. Yeah, you would think there'd have to be, well, we'll get into what maybe they can do to change that. There are a few things that are in place where they're supposed to have to prove that if the satellite decommissions, that it will safely burn up into the atmosphere or, like you said, go back into orbit. So there are those rules. But the Starlink satellites already had an issue because they almost hit an Indian satellite. And the Indian satellite, I believe it was, had to move out of the way at the last second to avoid getting hit by Elon Musk's.
Like a game of chicken in
Space.
space. Just
we're not gonna dude, come on. Get out of the way. So they had to move out of the way. But, that's with less than 300, you had that issue. What are we going to do with 30,000 of them up there?
Yeah. 30,000 times 3.
Yeah. With all of these other ones.
You do see those animations that we had up earlier that were basically how they're going to set the trajectories of these things so that they kind of weave around each other and interlace in space and don't collide with each other or anything else. And it's that could work if everything goes perfectly according to plan.
Right, which it always does.
I just don't have a lot of faith that will happen. So it is a little bit worrisome.
I just found, by the way, I did some research while we were chatting there, and it was just in January, the end of the previous month, that a NASA satellite and an Air Force satellite were expected to possibly collide right over the city of Pittsburgh.
America.
Now, I don't know that if there had been such a collision that it's not like they would just drop straight down to Pittsburgh. Right. No. You know what I mean? So probably in the ocean. Maybe France would have been screwed. I don't know. But but yeah, that just happened. And that's just the most recent example. Apparently they narrowly missed each other. But I wonder what a close shave in space is.
I don't know. Yeah.
How far are we talking about? Feet? Are we talking about, yards, miles?
Didn't these ones come within about 40 kilometers of each other?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Which is pretty far on the ground and everything, but still it's a little bit too close for comfort.
Right.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
40 feet.
40 feet, not kilometers.
40 feet,
no.
12 meters of each other.
40 feet in space?
That's insane. That's a close shave. Okay, now we know.
Yeah.
That's a close call in space.
That is definitely a close call. And the more people, we're just talking about those three companies or the different companies wanting to do the global Starlink thing, but everybody's getting access to space now. All of these smaller companies, one of the things that SpaceX is doing is they now have this rideshare program where I think it's $1 million you can send up somewhere around there. You can send up your own satellite. Anybody can do it. So they send them up all at once. So all of these companies like
I imagine a satellite, which is basically just like a fat head of Drew's face, just kind of orbiting the Earth,
smiling down, wherever you
go up into space. It's like, oh, hey, there's Drew.
Look at that.
He's moving so fast. It's like, don't blink or you'll miss him. But like, that would be pretty amazing.
Now I kind of want to make that happen.
Wait, you got a spare like million lying around. Let's make that happen. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Why not?
Right. Let's start a GoFundMe.
So with all of that up there, then and all of these things that are already in space, there's plenty of rules that are being put in place for the stuff that's now going up. And trying to prevent it.
What kind of rules are these, though? I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
that's
you say
fair.
rules, and I'm like, China clearly goes by their own rule book.
For sure.
And I don't know where Russia is and the whole cooperation thing, especially these days, but like, whose rules? Like, are these, United Nations rules? Are these like the U.S. is like, you guys should do this, and like other people are like, nah, we're going to do our own thing.
And
like,
that's true, because how many launches are secret, that people are just
Yeah.
especially when you come to the country level where they're just setting up stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And who can enforce that? Who's gonna tell them no? Like China shoots a satellite out like, hey.
Well, apparently,
Okay,
I mean,
nothing's gonna
in
happen.
the U.S., it's managed by the Defense Department. So I would imagine that is somewhat terrifying to other countries.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know.
As far as
Terrifying
a
to me.
penalty, but if they send something up and they lose control of it,
Right.
what do you do?
What do you do?
I mean, it's still up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can,
What you do is you send up Clint
Find him.
Eastwood.
Yeah.
He grabs his old,
becomes a space
NASA pals, and he becomes a space cowboy.
There
And
you go.
And he growls very disgruntledly about, what's my program doing on a Russian satellite? And we all enjoy it. It's great entertainment.
I'm already sold. As long as Ed Harris shows up too, I'm in.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's the other thing though. Thinking about how we clean it up, and that's where there's a whole bunch of different plans to attempt to clean up the space junk.
They're all so sci-fi.
It's ridiculous. I pulled up like a list of them. One of them, and this is one that they said they're actually going to be launching this thing. And I believe this is a Swiss company called ClearSpace One. And their idea is to send up another satellite with giant like octopus robot arms that will tentacles that'll come out and grab the other satellite and then hurl itself back down onto the earth.
Wow.
Yes. Like a Leviathan in space is what it is. And
It's like
so much
something suplexing a bunch of other things in
Yeah.
space.
Basically. I mean, which, the visuals of it it's entertaining, but how could we possibly do that for every single dead satellite?
That's like the robotic version of sending Shaq up in a spacesuit and just having him slam dunk stuff out of space.
I'll teach you a lesson.
That also seems, even just doing this once is going to be a massive undertaking.
Right.
And
Just
so
like,
And expensive. Yeah.
yeah, so to do that for every single piece of debris, many of which, like I said, are like under a centimeter in size.
Right.
Tracking those down is going to be very, very difficult. But the thing is, this is only one way that they're doing it. So this is most likely for bigger bits of debris, right?
Right,
For
bigger
defunct
satellites that are up there.
upper stages of rockets and stuff like that. The stuff that's over 10 centimeters in size, which I think I said there were 34,000 of those currently orbiting the Earth.
So that's 34,000 extra octopus robots. That
And then who's going to get rid of the octopus robots?
No, that's the thing. It's a kamikaze
Then they
robot.
fight each
It hurls
other.
itself down
Okay.
to Earth with it. Yeah.
And hopefully it doesn't hit Pittsburgh or Kentucky.
God bless Pittsburgh. Yeah, we got to make sure.
By the way,
that's it.
for the folks who are actually watching us live and got to see the graphic rendering of this satellite, if you're not, if you're listening on the podcast, you got to check this out. It's really something. Whoever created that had a great deal of fun. I don't know who was
Or
responsible
they were
for that, but
stuck in a fever dream in a different dimension. I'm not sure.
What about an octopus that can go to space?
All right. That's not even the craziest idea there.
No.
So go to some of these other ones you got on this
Another
list.
one is a space harpoon. This is another idea.
I like the style. of this one.
You send up a satellite that fires a harpoon
gonna
and
need a bigger
then
boat.
shoots hunts down the extra rogue space debris and then is able to reel it back in, I suppose.
This just seems like there are way more opportunities for things to go wrong. You're going to shoot something at something that's already moving really fast?
Fire a harpoon.
How do you know you're going to harpoon it? You're
you
just
better
gonna
have
hit
some really good
It's
aim.
just
gonna
gonna keep going
bounce off and
forever.
go faster,
Right.
yeah.
Or
Well, yeah, it's gotta go-
pull you into space once it hits the end of it.
Yeah.
like
well,
a
it's got to go.
slingshot.
These satellites are going, 12,000, 15,000 miles an hour. So it's got to go faster than that. So somehow they've got to figure out the trajectory, like a rocket on that thing.
This just seems like a less developed idea of the
Yeah.
robot octopus. It's just like
Yeah.
instead of 8 arms, they just have a harpoon gun.
I'm gonna fire that sucker at 20,000 miles an hour. I'll tell you what.
But I admire the ingenuity.
That's true.
This is amazing. The next thing you're going to tell me is we want to launch a gigantic horseshoe magnet
I
and
bet that's somebody's.
That
thinking
is
of
one
that.
of the ones that people
No!
want to
One,
do.
Come
yes.
on, what? This is this. Okay,
Acme.
look. This is
Acme.
Acme. This is Coyote and Roadrunner stuff.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, a bunch of engineers who grew up watching Coyote and Roadrunner are just, you know what? It worked for them. Let's put it out in space because
Magnets, man. Magnets.
How do they work?
I want to sit in the. I just want to hear the meeting where all this stuff came up. You know, they came up with all this stuff. Well, space debris. All right. So, well, speaking of magnets, there is another thing too that they did bring up, and actually, I've got a few of these. There's so many ridiculous ones. This part maybe could actually work. So it's magnetic tape that would go on a satellite that's actually already up. And then when it's the life of it is done, it extends down a magnetic tape. So it's about like I believe it's like a football field in length. This tape that would go down, and then you electrically charge it, and then it becomes more attracted to the gravity somehow, and then would pull it down.
So it's like a
So it's
fly.
like a little space anchor that kind of drags it down slowly.
Yeah, that's a good way to go.
And makes it
Space anchors.
Yeah.
that tape.
That's a smart thing because we can start building that into spacecraft that are already going up. I imagine that's going to increase the cost of producing satellites, though. So
Right.
how likely is this to be
Is somebody
widely
gonna be doing that?
adopted by people? Because I'm sure they're all running on tight budgets anyway.
Oh,
But
yeah.
You know what? Let's include the magnetic tape package just to do the right thing.
All the cheapskates on the
We'll
right.
toss
of
it
the
into
program.
the RFP, and what the. Okay. Are our tax dollars paying for this stuff? Like, is this where
I
my
mean-
tax dollars are going?
Depends who's launching the satellites in the space.
Yeah, I mean, one of them was I don't know if it's our tax dollars, but somebody's paying for it. I mean, that's for sure because
We're gonna raise the price of cigarettes in Oregon $1, and that's gonna
that's
get us some
bunch of
magnetic tape
space ink.
up in space.
God dang space junk tax.
Soda tax.
I ain't paying for no space junk tax. All right, so I don't know why that's the voice I go to every time for that stuff. Let's talk about another one. This is, wait for it, a space net. So imagine
my
this:
God.
you
I like
send
this
up
idea.
another satellite. And out from that is a giant net that comes out and then sweeps up a bunch of the space debris while it's doing it. That would
mean, that
actually
sounds-
might kind of work.
Yeah, that sounds more plausible.
How do we think
than
about
the
that?
other one?
If you're trying to catch a lot of stuff, you use a net.
That's true.
Like that's
That's
It's been working
their
for
marketing line
fishermen
right there.
exactly.
for ages.
You're effectively fishing for space debris. Like obviously the harpoon is maybe a little bit more precise, but you're only going to get one fish per shot. And the octopus thing, same deal. You're only getting one. The
the
net.
higher yield.
What's the kind of whale that just has this gigantic gaping mouth
Sperm whale.
and like
the
filters?
the baleen whale or whatever with the stuff and it gets the
It's
krill.
just it's just a gigantic gaping opening. and
whale shark?
Or a humpback
No,
whale.
it's a baleen whale.
is it
whale,
okay?
whale shark might be what you're.
Whatever.
I don't know.
It has a huge ass mouth.
Blue whale.
and nothing gets past
Gray
it.
whale.
It just goes through.
Narwhals. I'm just naming whales at this point.
Space whale.
Space whale. So you get a space whale up
Got
there.
nurse sharks and space whales. where are we? You know what? That's no more preposterous than some of the stuff I'm seeing up on
Yeah.
the screen right now.
Yeah, I mean that's seriously. There's some of this. I mean, I guess the space net might be the best one. There's another one, and I'm taking a look at this right now. I might have somebody else might have put this in.
I
there.
put this in there.
The laser broom.
The laser broom is.
I like the
Excuse
name of it
me?
already.
This was on Wikipedia, and the idea is this one actually seems pretty legit. So the idea is for all of these little pieces of debris or whatever that are floating around that we can't easily catch with a net or grab with an arm or whatever,
Yeah.
what they would do is they would have a ground-based laser array. That would be, you'd have to make it super precise so it could track the stuff through the air. But you basically blast lasers, high power lasers at this stuff. And it doesn't completely like burn it up. But what it does do is that it makes like stuff on the surface of whatever it is, like paint or ice or rust or whatever the hell's on it, ablate, which is basically just like burn up, which creates a tiny little bit of thrust. And as they pulse this and do it more and more and more, it creates enough thrust for this to go in like a higher orbit and basically just get it out of Earth's orbit.
Just
Okay.
go make
okay. I
it somebody
that idea.
else's problem.
Yeah, not our problem anymore.
Pew, 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 pew. Problem solved, y'all.
That sounds like the most fun.
Yeah, it does. Also, Laser Broom sounds like a really good garage band.
Yeah.
Laser Broom.
Went and saw my Uncle Donnie's band, Laser Broom, this weekend. Anyway.
That voice is getting a workout.
I know,
today.
it really is. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was going to happen today. So there's that. So a laser broom, I do like that idea. That's good. There is, I did put in there a little bit about Leo Labs too, just as far as tracking it, what you were mentioning.
Yeah. Which is, I think, the first part of all of this is actually knowing where all of these little bits are and actively tracking them, because then we can do the whole like space traffic control, like, oh hey, we got 2 satellites that might collide. Do you guys want to like maybe move them like real quick? Because we couldn't really do that easily before, but now there's all kinds of private sector companies and government funded like agencies that are actively tracking stuff in space.
Yeah.
To make sure that we can, avoid these things.
To know where it's at. I mean, that's just, again, some of the different ways that we've seen as far as getting them, getting all of this under control. But I don't know what else we can do. I mean, at this point, there's a lot up there. Caleb, I see you laughing about something right now.
Just checking out a whale shark.
I have a really good story.
I'm telling you, man, it's a baleen whale. Look it up.
All right.
Sorry.
It's okay.
They're so silly looking.
Images for whale with giant mouth turns up some really cool results.
It's a work computer. Just
Gigantic.
be careful. All right. Well, that's what we're talking about with this. So everybody's trying to come up with their own solutions. And I think the bottom line is, like, the ones that are going up now, you've got to have some kind of safety measure in place. But I don't know how you ever enforce it.
I mean, it'd have to be like enforced on a governmental level. Just like,
I mean, I see like companies could be enforced or penalized, severely if they
enforcing things in space. You know what might do that for us?
Space Force.
You know what?
I believe that's in discussions next week, though, actually.
It is.
So we're just going to put a pin in that one.
It is.
And come back around to it next week. Teaser.
That was part one. Yeah, part one of this. So it's a 2-parter here with our podcasts for this week and next week about space stuff. And that's what we're going to be discussing next week is Space Force and some of the different things along those lines. It's hard not to laugh every time you say Space Force. I know it's a serious thing. Space Force.
This is all very serious.
This is all very
We
serious.
could potentially never leave Earth again.
I mean, nobody
if the
laughs when
problem
you
gets
say
bad
Air
enough.
Force.
It's true.
Air
know.
Force is perfectly fine, but Space Force is dumb.
No, it totally makes sense.
I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it for next week.
Yeah. All right. We'll hold on to that. The other way I was thinking that we could actually handle this, I did have some meth head neighbors I lived next to once, and they really liked to harness like old metal. So what if we got them up into space? I think that could work out.
Well, actually, you know
how
what?
it
When
Meth heads up there.
tweakers, we were
Tweakers in
talking
space,
about,
man.
we were talking about the net and like fishing for these
Yeah.
scraps. Like
Yeah.
I thought about it, and I mean, like it's the whole like sci-fi future of like asteroid mining. Like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
if this creates a whole new job sector for people?
I'm an
it
orbital
is.
scrap miner.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this.
Real
It's an honest living.
Yeah.
Real salt of the space
That's right.
kind of individual out there living by your own rules, drinking space whiskey
One
and
man's space trash is
Space
another
moon.
man's
It
space
puts
treasure.
a whole new meaning to moonshine.
Oh, man.
All right. I don't know where we go after that.
don't either.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Trends with Benefits. This is our weekly Roundtable Tech Podcast. We appreciate everybody who joins us here. Hit that subscribe button wherever you are. And next week, we'll be talking about...
Bald eagle.
It's a bald
Eating
eagle
grilled cheese.
eating a grilled cheese. It just showed up on there, so that's an imagery for everybody for this weekend. All right, hit
tomato
subscribe, share the show, let everybody know about it. We'll be back next week with another episode.
we so will.
Have some more of that space whiskey.
Space hooch.